Welcome to my small Brooklyn apartment. Why are we here? Because this is where I made everything you're going to see and hear in this comedy special. Over there is my music studio, where I record and mix all the music you're going to hear. Right here is where I set up the green screen to do all the live action stuff, and back at the desk is where I do all the editing, design, and animation work. It's not a lot of space, and it's not the normal way to make a comedy special. But when your special's filled with music videos based on lesser-known history and cultural trends, you gotta do things a little differently. But I'm really happy with the way it turned out, and I think you're gonna like it. So let's get things started the same way they start every independent film, with way too many animated production company logos. Let's go back to mid-century, an era like no other. Everyone, asterisk, was happy and free as the kids all learned to duck and cover. Every family TV show had a wholesome daddy and mommy. It was illegal to be gay, and you could lose your job if someone called you a commie. They didn't even need any proof. Were those really the days that were so great? We want to go back to those ways, or is denial on display as we take all the bad things and wish them away? Everyone knew their neighbor's name and people were so kind, until a court case integrated the schools and everybody lost their freaking minds. If you were a woman at work, the glass ceiling held you down. You couldn't get a mortgage and you wouldn't get hired if you dared to frown.
'Cause you're so much prettier when you smile. What? It's a compliment.
Were those really the days that were so great? You give them unconditional praise, or are you just wiping the past away? So we'll go along with whatever you say. Are we just building a myth to bully people with, creating a national lore, fabricating the way things were before, and complaining that they're not that way anymore because of all the infidels at your door? We must reclaim our imagined past. Were those really the days that are worth inspiring an authoritarian craze, or is this just a power play hidden in a nostalgic haze? Were those really the days? 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 Ah, nostalgia. A lot of shows feature songs from the Great American Songbook, and those shows are nostalgic, happy, fun looks back at the past. But this show is going to take a look at looking back. Because sometimes, when you look back, what you're looking at is a bad look. So we look past what we're looking at in the past to try to make things look better. But for better or worse, the past is the past. And until we get past giving ourselves a pass on the past, things are just going to look the same. First thing I want to look at is something that happened not too long ago. A moral panic that swept the world and got kicked into high gear with the publication of this book, Michelle Remembers, in 1980. It's written by a psychiatrist and co-written by one of his patients, whom he later married. Red Flag. The book is about how, under hypnosis, they recovered these memories that a satanic cult had abused her throughout her childhood, even abducting her for months at a time. Now, her specific memories and the entire technique of recovering memories under hypnosis have been debunked, but not before this book became a bestseller. The couple went on TV and did interviews, and the idea really spread. 2020 did a piece on satanic abuse. 60 Minutes did a piece on ritual abuse. These are reputable news magazines. It was also covered by Geraldo, who did a 2-hour primetime special on Satan's Underground. Not only that, this psychiatrist started going to police departments throughout North America giving seminars telling them that this ritual abuse that he had no evidence for was happening in their jurisdictions and they needed to start catching people. And these rooms full of detectives who are supposedly trained to follow evidence believed him. He must have had some great slides. I mean, it's got to be true if it's on a slide, right? The fear spread and people started seeing devil stuff everywhere in movies and games and TV shows and music, especially heavy metal. And I grew up evangelically adjacent, so this idea kind of made sense to me. Of course the devil's going to use cool music to trick you out of your soul. That is just so like him. People started calling this the Satanic Panic, and the more people heard about it, the more reports there were. There were thousands of reports, hundreds of arrests, and dozens of people actually went to jail. But there was never any corroborating evidence, just a bunch of dubious testimony. And by the late 90s, this idea started to fade into the background, but the mentality that created it is still out there, fueling things like QAnon and the anti-drag panic. So I think we need to remind ourselves how stupid we got during the Satanic Panic. And I think the best way to do that is a heavy metal song.
Got someone to interrogate. The stories are boring and it's not going great. Tell them they gotta give you more. If they don't give you demons, don't let them out the door. Maybe slip them some occult information. Let them imagine and by speculation. Tell them they can never take it too far, cause you learned all this at a one-day seminar. Satanic Panic. Everyone needs a foe. You wanna feel right, you need someone to fight. Yeah, the devil is a devil, you know. Satanic Panic. Seek him and you shall find that the devil is everywhere, cause he's coming out of your mind. What are you blind? You're terrified of corrupting youth, so afraid you don't have time for the truth. So you take your fears and you pin them all on some sort of super secret global cabal. You subject everything to your devil inspection. Movies and games, your kids' record collection. If you don't find what you need in the lyrics, hey, play it backwards, maybe then you can hear it. Satanic Panic. See the world through this paranoid view. Dungeons and Dragons, that freak for Bo Baggins. Hell, Yoda's probably in on it too. Satanic Panic. He'll show up if you just say his name. You sit on your sofa while Ronaldo and Oprah pump hysteria straight to your brain. Bad things in this world are a mystery. Just take a look through looking for trauma, you won't have far to search. You can find some caused by the Catholic Church.
Or the Baptist Church, it turns out. Or a wrestling program or a gymnastics program. Look, I'm not saying all of those things, but some. And any is too many. And my point is, it's not international devil cults or Hollywood billionaires underneath a pizza parlor. It's people. Sometimes people suck.
Satanic Panic. No evidence is ever found. Life is confusing, but when you're accusing, it feels like you're on moral high ground. Satanic Panic. It'll leave your logic impaired. When stories are ominous, something flips on in us and we can't stop running scared. When stories are ominous, something flips on in us and we can't stop running scared.
If you grew up evangelically adjacent, you heard a lot about the devil and demons and the war in the spirit world between the forces of good and evil. You also heard a lot about the end of the world and the rapture and the 7 years of tribulation. 90s kids might remember the Left Behind book series set in the end times, a dystopian novel based on the Book of Revelation. They made a movie of it in 2000 starring TV's Kirk Cameron. They remade the movie in 2014 starring Nicolas Cage, because there's nothing Nicolas Cage can't or won't do. My dad had this book, The Late Great Planet Earth. It came out in 1970, written by a guy named Hal Lindsey. He took current events of his day and connected them to Bible prophecy to determine that the end times were right around the corner. This book was so successful, the New York Times says it was the best-selling nonfiction book of the entire decade of the 1970s. It was so successful, Hal Lindsey wrote a sequel called 80s Countdown to Armageddon, where he said the 80s could very well be the last decade of human history. Hal Lindsey went on to write 30 more books, the most recent of which came out in the mid-2000s called Faith for Earth's Final Hour. Ironically, writing books about the imminent end of the world is a career with great longevity. But nobody did it better than this guy, William Miller. He was a Baptist preacher in the 1830s and 1840s, and he scoured the books of the Bible to try to figure out when the second coming was coming, even though the Bible flat out tells you shall know not the day nor the hour. The Bible also says that the day of the Lord shall come as a thief in the night, which means if it comes to the United States, we're going to shoot it. Sorry, Lord, we were standing our ground. It's the second commandment, right? William Miller determined that the second coming would happen sometime between March of 1843 and 1844. He started giving sermons on the subject, and he started getting bigger and bigger crowds. He had this amazing chart, which is like the 19th century version of a slide. I mean, look at this thing. It's amazing. Had to cost a lot of money to get that thing made in the 1800s. There are no print-on-demand services. Newspapers were started to help spread the word, but by March of 1844, the second coming hadn't come. No problem. Some of Miller's followers just went back to the Bible, did a few more calculations, and said, for sure, October 22, 1844, write it down. Some people left their jobs. Other people started wearing white robes. Some people started acting like children because there's a Bible verse that says you must receive the kingdom of God as like a child. But October 22, 1844 came. Nothing happened. And so many people were so upset by this that the newspapers at the time and historians since have called it the Great Disappointment, which is just so emo, I had to write an emo song about it. And I think emo with its whiny teen energy has the right vibe for waiting for the second coming, because it's kind of like being a teenager stuck at the mall waiting for your parents to come pick you up. It's like, oh, that's gotta be them. That is not them. That's gotta be them. That's not them either. Why have they forsaken us? Now I'm poking a little fun, but I hope at the time there were some people that had some compassion for the disappointed Millerites. And I'd like to imagine at least one person went up to one of them and said, hey, it's gonna be okay. It's not the end of the world.
I thought I did everything right, but he still bailed on me. It's not fair. Since you said you're coming back, we've kept faith and we've kept track. You left clues to when you'd come, but they're so vague and we feel dumb. Please hurry with your solving all these riddles hurts my brain. You sent signs and we waited on the day that we calculated. We're here, where are you? What the hell are we supposed to do anymore after 1844? Tried to figure out your path. We read your books and did the math, counting up from ancient days. We showed our work so many ways. I really hope the time is near, 'cause I did not plant any crops this year. We're here,
the second coming, something invisible happened in the spirit world to help set it up. And it's still gonna happen any day. We're here, we're not moving. When you believe there's just no disproving. We'll set dates if you dare us. And when we're wrong, we won't be embarrassed anymore. After 1844.
All right, we're going to move away from religion and move on to something else we take way too seriously in this country, and that is our national anthem. People get riled up for it. They get mad if you take a knee during it. Some people even got mad at the Women's World Cup soccer team for not singing it enough. P.S. Whitney Houston is the only one who should ever be allowed to sing it ever again. She perfected it. It's done. And I realize that by disparaging the national anthem, I am jeopardizing my potentially lucrative NFL career, but I am not protesting it politically, just musically. The music is not great. It's got that annoying high note in it that everybody treats like it's some sort of contest. I'm going to sing that note higher and louder and longer than anyone. Now, we all know where the national anthem came from. George Washington ascended to the top of Mount Vernon to commune with God for 40 days and 40 nights, and at the end he came down with these stone tablets upon which were written. That's not what happened. No, the music from our national anthem actually comes from a different song called To Anacreon in Heaven, and it was the theme song for a social club, but it was well known in the colonial era. Some dude from Baltimore wrote new lyrics for it, and when you write new lyrics to an old piece of music, that is technically called a contrafactum, which is a really pretentious way to describe what Weird Al does. Now, the real story is Francis Scott Key, a Baltimore area lawyer, was in Baltimore Harbor in 1814 during the War of 1812, and he was witnessing the British bombardment of Fort McHenry. And in the morning, when he saw the stars and stripes still flying above the fort, he was so overcome with joy that he wrote a song parody. So that's it. Social club theme song plus a poem some dude wrote equals the thing we sing before every single sporting event ever. Which brings us to the lyrics. Also not great. There are 4 verses of this song. We only sing the first one, and it ends with a question. Oh, say does our star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Question mark? We stop singing. Our national anthem is a cliffhanger. Hey, is our flag still there? Tune in next week to find out. Previously on the defense of Fort McHenry. Also, our national anthem doesn't mention the name of our nation. United States of America, United States, America aren't mentioned anywhere in the national anthem. Compare that with our neighbors to the north. Oh, Canada. Boom, second word. They do not bury the lead. My point is, it's not a sacred text. It's not the word of God. We don't need to take it so seriously. It just got thrown together. It could have got thrown together 100 different ways. For example, what if Francis Scott Key was not in Baltimore in 1814, but happened to be in Washington, D.C. in 1814 when the British burned down the White House? What would our national anthem be then? I think it might go a little something like this.
We have to admit it was not our best night. The whole town was lit, and by dawn flames still crackled. As we make the best of this harrowing sight, we'll tell ourselves it just needs a wee bit of spackle. We'll need some strong chaps with some ladders and straps. Oh crap, we'll need more, 'cause the roof just collapsed. Sometimes you get burned up by freedom's hot flame. But our house isn't sure.
Looks like he's going for it, Jim. We'd heard that he might be attempting a record for the longest high note, and it appears he is.
He's been building up to this for some time. He fell just short at the All-Star game.
He's been doing circular breathing training with an Aboriginal Australian elder to build up his power.
And also some free diving training to build up his stamina. And so far, it looks like that training is paying off.
He's off to a good start, but I heard just a slight waver there. Was that nerves, or is he starting to lose his breath? Time will tell.
I
The strain is definitely taking a toll. His eyes are tearing up.
And he is sweating profusely now.
Oh my, he's taking a knee. He's taking a knee.
Now, there are no rules on body position. To accommodate differently abled people, you could stand, sit, lie down.
But this is clearly not a good sign.
Absolutely not. He's obviously in a lot of pain.
And he's down.
Appears to be unconscious.
Medics are rushing the field now, and the only question left is who's going to finish the anthem?
One of the medics is taking the mic.
They truly are heroes.
They are. Give it up for the first responders.
So we'll just make a claim.
Sometimes even non-religious ideas sound kind of religious when people try to explain them. My favorite example of this is the invisible hand of the marketplace. You heard that metaphor? Supposedly describing the benevolence of free markets. It's the belief that if you just let everybody pursue their self-interest, everything will balance out and it'll create the best of all possible worlds. It comes to us from Adam Smith, who is a Scottish philosopher, and he uses it a couple of different ways. Sometimes he says the rich shall be guided by an invisible hand, and sometimes it's the market that's being guided by an invisible hand. Something is being guided by an invisible hand. And I don't know if he meant for this to sound as creepy as it does, but to me, Invisible Hand sounds like a villain organization from like a James Bond movie, like Spectre or Quantum or Hydra. Which is why I wrote my song about the Invisible Hand in the style of a classic James Bond theme song.
Have you heard about a power untold? It's there whenever you trade something for gold. Just make money, it takes care of the rest. With no work from you, things work out for the best. It builds a world better than a world could be planned. It's the invisible hand. It's the invisible hand. If they're selling smoke and you can't get enough, and you would kill for just one little puff, then they find out it's the smoke killing you, and they prefer no one had any clue. Who hides the truth so the smoke won't get banned? It's the invisible hand. It's the invisible hand. The invisible hand can work wonders. It brings the best to the here and the now. And if there's something that isn't quite perfect, well then it's probably your fault somehow. If you see pain and injustice and things that you must fix, just stick your head in the sand and trust the invisible hand. The invisible hand. You want to disrupt things and climb to the top. You say you can test blood with one little drop. A story so good that it captures the mind, but the technology's lagging behind. Who says don't worry, it's time to expand. It's the invisible hand. The invisible hand. The invisible hand. The invisible hand.
Coming up, the CEO of a huge car company buys a media outlet to help spread his social views.
Right after these algorithmically determined messages.
We love business in this country. The business of America is business, said one of our presidents. I think we also overappreciate business leaders and think they can do anything. I think they think so too, because they're always running for office saying, we're going to run this country like a business. And this is not new. Back in the day, people wanted Henry Ford to run for president. He actually did run for Senate in Michigan, and he had so many people around him telling him that he should win that when he lost, he was convinced it was the result of fraud. He wouldn't concede, and he sued his opponent. Sound familiar? We tend not to remember that about Henry Ford. We just remember him as the car guy. To be fair, the Ford Motor Company was a big deal. The Model T Ford is the only thing they made from 1908 to 1927. That's all they made. But it changed manufacturing, it changed transportation, it changed infrastructure. That's the part we remember. Less remembered about Henry Ford is that he really hated jazz. He hated jazz, and like most of the things he hated, he blamed his popularity on a Jewish conspiracy. Because another thing we don't remember about Henry Ford is that he was hugely anti-Semitic. Henry Ford was so anti-Semitic. How anti-Semitic was he? He was so anti-Semitic he bought a newspaper so that it could run a weekly column on the Jewish problem. It ran for 91 weeks. He then bound those columns up into a book which he gave away at his dealership. And that book went on to become very popular in 1930s Germany. 2 of those essays were on the evils of jazz. Here's a headline that says, Jewish jazz, moron music becomes our national music. Now, he's not talking about swing or bebop. He's talking about the earliest songs to be called jazz, like basically what became American popular songs. He hated these songs and was convinced that they were going to be the downfall of society and was sure that their popularity was a result of a Jewish conspiracy. So to make fun of him for this and to remind everybody what a huge dick he was about it, I wrote him a 1920s-style jazz song.
Henry Ford was adored for making automobiles, but after several years it didn't have the same appeal. So he bought a paper for himself and hired some scribes to publish weekly anti-Jewish diatribes. And of the several racist views that he has, he blames the Jews for how much he hates jazz. And if this music criticism sounds insane, it is. Shouldn't a car guy know to stay in his lane? Beep, beep, out of the way. The old man has something to say. Here's a word from Henry Ford. I don't like songs with too many chords. The tooting horns and jungle beat make young people move their feet. The Charleston is quite a scare, so I'll force all dancers into squares.
That's right, Henry Ford heavily promoted square dancing as his corrective for all the urban jazz that he hated so much. That's why we all had to take it in grade school. Let's see, square dancing involves one person on stage telling everyone else exactly what to do. Why, that's not dancing, that's tyranny!
Beep, beep, out of the way. What's wrong with these kids today? Their music's bad, there's no denying it, so it must be a plot by Zionists. Music was good before. How great was that Civil War? Yeah, people died, I guess that's wrong, but it's a small price for such great songs. Just keep that music free of all the ethnic syncopation. Sonic impurities are a mark of too much immigration. It's got to be an evil plot. Each week new tunes assault the ears. No one needs this many songs. I made one product for 18 years. Beep, beep, out of the way. Will jazz destroy the USA? This old man thinks it's true, and he blames it on the Jews. And he's gonna use all his capital to spew all his racist views today. Beep, beep.
When you get right down to it, Henry Ford was a 60-year-old guy who didn't like the music the kids were listening to. Music was better when I was younger. When Henry Ford was a kid, it was the Civil War. One of the examples he gives as good music is Old Folks at Home by Stephen Foster, which is great because if you want to talk about American songs, you got to talk about Stephen Foster. He was the first really well-known American songwriter, and he had hits like Oh Susanna and Camptown Races and Old Folks at Home, which you probably know better as Swanee River. Unfortunately, if you talk about Stephen Foster, you also have to talk about minstrel shows, because a lot of his songs and songs of the day were written for minstrel companies. Minstrel shows were hugely popular in the 1800s, and it's where a lot of people heard new songs for the first time. These shows featured actors in blackface doing broad caricatures of Southern black people, and the songs were called plantation songs because these characters were waxing nostalgic for plantation life or singing about how much they loved playing the banjo in the antebellum South. Old Folks at Home is just such a song. It's from the point of view of either a formerly or currently enslaved old man, and he's singing about how much he misses his childhood home. It literally has the line, "Still longing for the old plantation." And it is, to this day, the state song of Florida. Hi, Florida. Now, Florida did update the lyrics in 2007. But I'm sure we're just one Ron DeSantis press conference away from saying, we gotta go back to the original lyrics. The woke mob can't tell us not to miss plantation life. And Florida is only one of the states that's trying to legislate how we teach history in this country, so it doesn't make anybody uncomfortable. But sometimes history should make you uncomfortable because sometimes history sucks. So I wrote my Stephen Foster-style song about how uncomfortable and defensive a lot of us get when the subject of race comes up. Some people call it white fragility. I just call my song Plug Your Ears and Sing.
When you're talking history, the stories can be sad. Slaves and segregation can make white folks feel bad. So let's pretend that bondage wasn't as bad as they say. And let's not try to tie the past to what we have today. So don't learn your history, just plug your ears and sing. Ignore unhappy subjects, which is almost everything. We don't like the stories when the villains look like us. If we feel some discomfort, we'll raise an angry fuss. We want to feel better about evils done before. We'll even change the reasons why there was a civil war. Oh, don't learn your history, just plug your ears and sing. Ignore unhappy subjects, which is almost everything. White folks' past transgressions can put white folks on defense. Just by saying white folks, most white folks take offense. So let's avoid the subject, let's all get along. Let's center our own voices as we sing a happy song. Oh, don't learn your history, just plug your ears and sing. Ignore unhappy subjects, which is almost everything. We'll only take our history when we've removed all the warts. If teachers hurt our feelings, we'll take them all to court. For it's not proper manners to frankly talk of race. We treat everyone equally if they just knew their place. Oh, don't learn your history, just plug your ears and sing. Ignore unhappy subjects, which is almost everything. Oh, don't learn your history, just plug your ears and sing. Ignore unhappy subjects, which is almost everything.
Don't worry, the show's about to get super fun and silly again after this next song. But we are going to get out of the 1800s. We're going to go all the way to 1910 with the publication of this book, Cowboy Songs and Other Frontier Ballads. It was collected by John Lomax, who was an ethnomusicologist and an anthropologist. He went out west and he learned all these songs from cattlemen and ranchers and bartenders, and he went back east and he published it, and it was a huge hit. And it's one of the many examples of how important the American West is in American self-image. This idea of rugged individualism and self-reliance is all over the stories of the American West. So much so, people started calling it the frontier myth. The idea that the West was just this open, bountiful land where all you had to do was go out there, get a little piece of land, and work it really hard. With the strength of your own gumption, you'll succeed with grit. Now, this myth completely overlooks the fact that there were tons of people already living out there. So I'd like to think that it dawned on at least one cowboy singer that this myth was a little lacking.
The western sky covers all we revere, except for the people who were already here. There's opportunity for those who can persevere, except for the people who were already here. Come on and grab yourself some acres, we need lots of takers. We fake it till we make it, that's why makers are such bakers. We're out here where the opportunities are sublime. The heavy hand of government will not interfere,
except with the people who are already here.
We believe in meritocracy out on this frontier,
except for the people who are already here.
This land of opportunity's a clarion call. Our divine mission is clear. The bounty of this land will be open to all, except for the people who are already here. We'll spread the gifts of liberty that we hold dear,
except to the people who are already here.
Anyone can stand their ground if they're in fear,
except for the people who are already here.
The taming of this land will give us all cause to cheer,
except for the people who are already here.
We'll idolize Western characters for years,
except for the people who are already here. Except for the people who are already here.
I'm not even talking about the descendants of the Spanish and the Southwestern people who've been here for hundreds of years, or even the Chinese laborers who were brought over to build the railroad and basically enslaved and not given any rights. You see, the economy of the West had less to do with cattle and more to do with real estate and mining and lumber and other extractive industries. My point is, history's complicated.
Coming up, the happiest, peppiest, most upbeat song you've ever heard in your life. After these messages.
I wanted to make sure that the show wouldn't get too depressing and that there were some upbeat and super happy, peppy songs in it because I'm a child of the 70s. I grew up with things like Up With People and Free to Be, You and Me. When I was a kid, even the Coca-Cola commercials were kind of inspiring. They wanted to teach me to sing in perfect harmony. So I wrote a very happy, peppy, sunshine pop song about a very quirky American socioeconomic belief.
Corporations are people too, they're just like you and me. They have to keep showing quarterly growth thanks to shareholder primacy. They're always trying to look good to sell themselves to the investor class. And they claim that they're really from Ireland to avoid paying U.S. tax.
Admit it, we've all done that. Chop up the morning to you.
Corporations are people too, they have needs and desires. They just want to have a few good years so they can be acquired. They can enter into contracts and yes, they can get sued. But then they go bankrupt and kill themselves and everyone is screwed.
Uh-oh, just try collecting that settlement now. It's gonna be tricky.
And nothing's more important to a corporate person than their right to political speech. With their millions in undisclosed super PAC funds, they can do things beyond the average citizen's reach. They can muddy the waters of discourse, so they can dirty the water and air. They can buy all the minutes of corporate media.
Sure, that's totally fair.
Corporations are people too, they have First Amendment rights.
Free speech.
The Second Amendment should apply to them too. It would help in proxy fights.
Oh, look out.
They can have religion and be extremely devout. And do any law that they think is a demon, they can say, I cast thee out.
Because when has nullification of a federal law ever caused a problem before?
Corporations are people too, they could be your best friend. Just like real people, they'll like you more the more you spend on them. They can do some charity work, they can be patrons of the arts.
Hooray!
And just like you, they can get bought out and then sold off for parts.
Like that time you woke up in a Juarez bathtub missing a kidney? What the hell was that? Who did this?
It's people! Corporations are people! Because it's like a horror show, but we're living it. This next song is inspired by an unlikely source, that certain brand of political opinionator that says that there's a masculinity crisis, that society is too feminizing, that men aren't allowed to be men anymore. You ask them, what does it mean to be a man? And they usually say things like strength and leadership and other qualities that aren't inherently masculine. The funny thing is, men have been throwing hissy fits about masculinity crises for at least 150 years. Back in the Victorian era, there was a trend called Muscular Christianity, or Christian manliness, where men, usually upper crusty privileged men, were worried that society was too feminizing, that men were losing their edge, that if we got too soft, we wouldn't be able to properly rule the world the way God has ordained. So they invented things like football and basketball, and they took up boxing and wrestling. Theodore Roosevelt was a huge adherent to the Muscular Christianity trend. He boxed, he wrestled, he went out west to become a rancher. Theodore Roosevelt's a rich kid from Manhattan. He grew up in the East 20s. The name Roosevelt is a Dutch name that's been around New York since it was New Amsterdam. He's the bluest of the blue bloods, but he's like, I gotta be a cowboy and wrestle a bear. A lot of things we have today grew out of Muscular Christianity, like American football. We think it's dangerous now. American football is a sport that's designed to injure you. Back in the early 1900s, dozens of people died from football injuries. They even had a meeting at the White House with Theodore Roosevelt where they're like, I don't know, I guess we need rules? We don't want people to die, just get hurt real bad. Basketball also grew out of Muscular Christianity, as did an organization that built athletic facilities in urban areas and connected them to churches so young urban men would have some place to go. This organization was called the Young Men's Christian Association. We know it better as the YMCA. And I find it deliciously ironic that the name of an organization that grew out of Muscular Christianity, which was a reaction to masculine insecurity, is also the title of the gayest disco anthem ever. And that's hilarious to me because I think the last thing these masculinity crisis pundits are going for is a campy embrace of gay culture via the music of disco. But then again, who knows what they're going for when they promote things like this? The important thing is, when it came time to pick a genre for my song about Muscular Christianity, there really was only one choice.
This one goes out to all the people out there who say there is a masculinity crisis, that men aren't allowed to be men anymore, because I think it says more about their own insecurity than anything society is doing to them. And some people try to overcompensate by being so overly macho, it gets a little weird. But if you're looking for macho men, you've come to the right place.
This world is troubling your soul, caught between traditional and new gender roles. Things are changing, you're not automatically on top. You gotta make the doubting voices stop. So you gotta work that bod if you wanna get close to God. Punching things might just work to make you a self-righteous jerk. You think this world is yours by divine providence, that you deserve to have a place of prominence, but deep down inside you're worried you're not good enough, so you fill your life with what you think is manly stuff, and so you puff out your chest. It's a holy quest to get ripped and be blessed. If you wanna pass the test, you gotta work that bod. If you wanna get close to God, how you gonna be in charge if your biceps aren't that large? You gotta be strong, or God says you're wrong. So train hard and train long, with a throng of other sweaty men.
Oh, it's a dance party now. If I had the budget, this is where I would have some shirtless, oiled up muscle dudes working out, spotting each other suggestively. Then I'd have a super ripped Jesus come in and start DJing, and everybody would lose their minds. There'd be strobe lights, glow sticks, confetti. It turns into a rave. Teddy Roosevelt starts dancing with a furry teddy bear. Tucker Carlson and Ben Shapiro are doing the Lindy Hop. You got Alex Jones popping and locking. You're like, hey, where are all the women? See, we're not allowed to hang out with women that we're not married to. That's the Billy Graham rule, which states,
Don't ever be alone with a woman in a room, or she'll tempt you with the powers of her womb. So get strong or be doomed. You gotta work that bud if you wanna get close to God. How you gonna dominate if you don't overcompensate? You gotta work that bud if you wanna get close to God. You gotta growl and bark if you wanna be a patriot. Work that bud.
Well, that was ridiculous. I have one more song for you, and we're going to bookend the show with another dose of nostalgia because we're going back to the 90s. The 1990s. I realize I need to specify that with this show. The 90s started with a short, weird economic recession that economists say ended in 1991, even though unemployment continued to rise through the middle of 1992. For this, they came up with the new term, jobless recovery, which basically says, hey, corporate America's doing great, what's the problem? The decade also started with the war in Iraq. Not the Iraq War, no, the 90s version was called the Gulf War, and it did end in 1991 after a months-long aerial campaign and a few days of a ground invasion. On the less depressing side of things, the 90s saw the dawn of the consumer internet and a dot-com boom. AOL instant messaging software taught everyone a new text-based way to communicate. OMG. And handheld computers that could run different apps became commonplace. I had this one. This is the Handspring Visor. It ran the Palm operating system. It had a touchscreen and would run different apps. It's kind of like an iPhone minus 10. And this is one of the reasons I love digging into history. You see connections to the past, you start to see where things come from, and that helps you understand why things are the way they are. A lot of the things we talked about in this show, like seeing the devil or signs of the apocalypse everywhere, our reverence for business leaders, our adoration of wealth, or our habit of lying about the past to reinvent ourselves, all of those things shape American culture. And I believe all of those things also make our culture really fertile ground for con artists. I don't think it's a coincidence that in our language the word hustle means to work hard or cheat someone out of money. We're like, both are good. Con artists fascinate me, whether they're in business or the arts or the White House. And it was really hard to pick which infamous American con artist to do a song about in this show. But I chose this guy from the 90s not just to get a dose of nostalgia, but because he did something with his money that no one else did. I guess the moral of the story is, if you're gonna cheat a bunch of people out of a whole lot of money, at least give the world something back, like this guy did.
In the 90s, all your preteen dreams had been funded by a classic Ponzi scheme. Money from financial malfeasance was used to find boys who could sing and dance. A guy named Lou had a slew of bogus companies. People invested, but the money went missing.
Oh no.
He said that he ran aviation companies across the nation, but he was straight up grifting. He used the money to begin a talent search, founded agencies and labels in a blink, hired coaches, choreographers, and chaperones. Soon he gave the world Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. In the 90s, every preteen dream had been funded by a classic Ponzi scheme. Money from financial malfeasance was used to find boys who could sing and dance. A middle-class kid from Queens who liked helicopters and planes sold a blimp to Jordache James, but it went down in flames. He took the companies public with shady penny stocks, had insurance and accounting forms, but he forged all the docs. The transportation companies were barely real. The investment fund is where huge sums were lost.
That's where they lost it.
He lied to borrow money, which he spent on record deals.
So
like $3 million in Backstreet Boys startup costs. In the 90s, every preteen dream had been funded by a classic Ponzi scheme. And since combat always thrived on reality TV, he started making the band on ABC. Eventually, all of his acts would sue him, and authorities like the SEC would start to see right through him. He borrowed more and for a while was somewhat resilient, but in the end he'd taken over $300 million.
Word, the guy who started Backstreet Boys and NSYNC stole $300 million. $100 million from individuals.
In the 90s, every preteen dream had been funded by a classic Ponzi scheme. Money from financial malfeasance was used to find boys who could sing and dance.
If you're wondering, the other $200 million was from institutional investors.
In the 90s, every preteen dream had been funded by a classic Ponzi scheme. Money from financial malfeasance was used to find boys who could sing and dance.
Hey, you watched the whole thing. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed it. As a reward, I have a bonus song for the closing credits. It was the original opening song of the CD, but it's on the mellower side, so that's why I wrote that new opening number that you saw on this special. But I really dug this original opening song. It's kind of a John Mellencamp, Bruce Springsteen rock song straight out of the heartland, like me, born and raised in Waukegan, Illinois. So I put it here with some closing credits, some acknowledgments, and some behind-the-scenes stuff from this production and from the live shows. And if you like the show, please help spread the word, like and subscribe, all that good stuff. It would really help me out. I'd appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching.
Do you remember way back when? The way things could have and should have been. Let's go back there once again, even though it never happened that way. Memory is a funny thing. It changes with every emotion you bring, especially when you start to sing about those good old days. Yeah, they might have been good 'cause we were young and dumb and ignorant and naive, but admitting that's no fun, so just believe what you wanna believe. Yeah, remember it better for your mental health, 'cause it always feels good to feel good about yourself. In your memories, your feet don't need to be on the ground. Is it a lie or a wish or a little bit of both? Who cares? You're not in court and you're not under oath, so don't let the truth push you around. Yeah, just remember it better. We give ourselves a passing grade whenever there's guilt we want to evade. We'll always say mistakes were made, but we'll never admit that we made them. If your brain has anything to say in the matter, it'll give you what you want on a silver platter. 'Cause we all have egos that can shatter, so our memories work to inflate them. If you're not thrilled with your life now, your brain has a defense. It sneaks into your memories and tampers with the evidence, till you remember it better than you feel glad than sad. 'Cause now you're missing crap you might have never had, but it lets you step back from all that scary and new. Don't let reality intimidate you. Let your memories go down and fillet you. The way you live in your past is
was so good back then. They'll believe your bullshit when you say you can make it